When Sotheby's brought down the hammer on a slightly frayed, decades-old red sweater for a staggering $1.1 million, it shattered a long-held myth. For years, the public was fed a convenient narrative. Princess Diana was simply the relatable people's princess, a woman who favored everyday items because she craved comfort and a touch of normalcy within a highly restrictive environment. The media painted her choices of casual knitwear, canvas sneakers, and gym shorts as a desire to blend in, to escape the heavy expectations of the monarchy. But ordinary people wear $70 sneakers and oversized sweatshirts to be comfortable. Diana weaponized them, finding herself locked inside an institution with incredibly strict censorship, where every spoken word was monitored and public statements were heavily controlled. She turned her accessible wardrobe into a devastating tool for media manipulation. She realized early on that she could not speak freely, but she could ensure the cameras captured exactly what she wanted them to see. She used a 50-pound jumper to broadcast a distress signal, repetitive athletic wear to systematically bankrupt the paparazzi industry, and the deliberate choice between a luxury Chanel bag and a catalogue-bought sapphire ring to challenge the very foundation of royal protocol. Her style was never just about looking relatable. It was a highly calculated method to bypass palace censors, dictate global headlines, and reclaim her own story right in front of the flashing cameras. The execution of this visual strategy began long before she ever wore a crown. The year was 1981. It was just weeks before what the global press had breathlessly dubbed the wedding of the century. The 19-year-old Lady Diana Spencer arrived at a polo match, instantly surrounded by a relentless sea of cameras, reporters, and the intense, suffocating weight of public expectation. Instead of wearing the tailored silk or conservative tweed expected of a future queen, she stepped out wearing a bright red sweater from a small, independent brand called Warm and Wonderful. The design was simple, but incredibly specific. It featured rows upon rows of identical white sheep, and right across the chest, a single black sheep facing the exact opposite direction. To the untrained eye, and certainly to the public at the time, it was just a quirky, charming fashion choice made by a young, relatable woman. The press adored it, finding it endearing and fresh, but the reality was far more profound. In Western culture, the term black sheep has always been a clear idiom for the outcast, the odd one out, the undeniable flaw within a supposedly perfect family structure. Even before the public had any inkling of the complex dynamics behind closed doors, or the looming, quiet presence of Camilla within the royal circle, that sweater was already broadcasting the truth. Diana knew she was stepping into a world where she did not quite fit, a highly synchronized environment where everyone was expected to walk in the same direction, follow the same unspoken rules, and project an image of flawless unity. She could not grant an interview to express her intense isolation. She could not speak to journalists about her growing doubts regarding the impending marriage. The royal machinery had already closed ranks around her, ensuring a pristine public facade that allowed no room for hesitation or fear. So, she bypassed the censors entirely by wearing the truth on her sleeves. It was a coded distress signal hidden in plain sight, an act of quiet rebellion from a woman who had just realized the golden cage was locking shut. What makes this particular item even more fascinating is how completely the institution misunderstood her methods. When the original sweater began to fray at the cuff from repeated wear, Buckingham Palace actually sent an official letter to the designers at Warm and Wonderful, politely requesting a repair or a replacement. The palace administration treated it as a standard wardrobe maintenance request for a favored casual garment, completely missing the deep irony of the design. They were effectively preserving the very garment that was silently critiquing them. The designers promptly sent a brand new one, and Diana deliberately chose to wear the replacement again in 1983. It was no longer just a pre-wedding statement of apprehension. It was a continuous, silent confirmation of her status within the royal fold. She was reminding the world, and perhaps herself, that the feeling of being the outsider had not faded after the vows were exchanged. As the decade turned and the 1980s bled into the early 90s, the media's fascination with her morphed into an entirely different beast. It was no longer a polite, deferential curiosity. It had become a relentless, high-stakes hunt. Every time she stepped out of the heavy wooden doors of her residence, a frantic physical assault of flashing bulbs, shouting photographers, and aggressive long lenses ensued. In the ruthless economy of tabloid journalism, candid shots of the Princess of Wales going about her daily life were incredibly lucrative. A single, exclusive photograph of her walking to her car could fetch tens of thousands of pounds from the editors at The Sun or the Daily Mail. She was the most photographed woman on the planet, and her image was the currency that sustained a sprawling, aggressive paparazzi industry. In response, she did not hide. Instead, she deployed what appeared to be her most casual, unremarkable garments, not for comfort, but for calculated economic sabotage. When leaving the Chelsea Harbour Club after her daily workouts, she began appearing in a highly specific, aggressively informal uniform. An oversized, faded Virgin Atlantic or Northwestern University sweatshirt, tight athletic bike shorts, and thick, white crew socks pushed down into her sneakers. To the average observer, this is merely practical workout attire, meant to absorb sweat and allow for movement. But Diana understood a fundamental vulnerability in the paparazzi's business model. A photograph only holds financial value if it can be proven to be fresh. By deliberately wearing the exact same navy sweatshirt and the identical pair of bike shorts day after day, week after week, she effectively poisoned the well. When photographers rushed their film to the development labs and sprinted to the news desks, the resulting images looked exactly like the ones taken the previous Tuesday and the Tuesday before that. Tabloid editors, hungry for new angles and fresh outfits to justify their screaming headlines, began to refuse the pictures. They could not verify if the images were taken that morning or a month prior. The paparazzi, realizing their hard-won shots were suddenly financially worthless, eventually grew frustrated and lowered their cameras. She had used a handful of basic, unglamorous cotton garments to bankrupt the very industry that was hunting her, turning their own greed against them. Yet, even in the midst of this brilliant masterclass in casual dressing, she ensured there was a stark, deliberate contrast. Swinging from the arm of this sweaty athletic silhouette was a pristine, luxurious Gucci bamboo-handled tote. It was large, boxy, undeniably expensive, and meticulously crafted by Italian artisans. Pairing a high-end designer handbag with mundane gym shorts and damp hair was a visual paradox that broke every known rule of royal propriety. It was not a careless mistake, it was a psychological flex. By dragging aristocratic luxury down to the sweaty pavement, she sent a clear, unyielding message. She was refusing to perform the immaculate royal role for their lenses, yet the luxury accessory served as a quiet reminder of her untouchable status. She might be wearing gym clothes, but she was still royalty, and she was dictating the terms of engagement. Today, this aesthetic remains so deeply influential that Gucci's creative director Alessandro Michele reissued the design as the Gucci Diana, complete with neon leather belts around the handles, with prices starting around $3,600. The bag that was once a shield against the press is now a monument to her ingenuity. As the marriage publicly fractured and the formal separation was announced, her strategic use of fashion shifted once again. The battle lines moved from the sidewalks outside the gym directly to the gilded halls of the palace establishment. This era was defined by a highly calculated war of symbols, fought entirely through the accessories she chose to elevate and, more importantly, the ones she chose to violently discard. During the late 80s, she had been an avid patron of the French luxury house Chanel, frequently wearing their classic tweed suits and carrying a specific curved flat bag that Karl Lagerfeld himself eventually renamed the Diana bag in her honor. However, following the bitter and highly publicized split from Prince Charles, she completely severed her relationship with the brand. To the rest of the world, those intertwined seas were the ultimate global symbol of prestige and wealth. To her, they were an inescapable, visceral manifestation of Charles and Camilla. An ordinary woman going through a difficult divorce might simply pack away items that evoke painful memories. Diana, however, used her highly visible rejection of one of the world's most powerful fashion houses to quietly and firmly declare her stance on the affair. She refused to allow the initials of the betrayal to rest against her body, The sheer brilliance of this symbolic warfare becomes evident when you contrast what she discarded with what she fiercely held onto. While the Chanel bags were banished to the back of her closet, she adamantly refused to remove her 12-carat Garrard sapphire engagement ring, continuing to wear it prominently to official engagements long after the separation was finalized. This decision was not a desperate act of clinging to a broken marriage. It was a calculated assertion of her permanent power. When she originally selected the ring in 1981, it had caused a quiet scandal within aristocratic circles. Unlike traditional royal engagement rings, which were bespoke, priceless heirlooms carefully crafted behind closed doors to ensure absolute exclusivity, Diana had simply pointed to a ring in a Garrard catalogue. Anyone with $60,000 could have walked into the jeweler and purchased the exact same piece. The establishment found this accessibility entirely inappropriate for a future queen, viewing it as dangerously common. Yet, by keeping this specific, publicly accessible ring on her finger during the most tumultuous years of her divorce, she was delivering a masterful psychological blow to the institution. She was silently asserting that her power and legitimacy did not stem from the ancient, exclusive vaults of the monarchy, but from her connection to the public. She wore the ring as a shield and a reminder. No matter what decrees the palace issued, she remained the mother of the future king, and she possessed the unwavering support of the people who bought items just like hers. Furthermore, she began to wage a sartorial Cold War against the palace's mandated aesthetic. The royal family traditionally favored British heritage brands, using their clothing to project a unified nationalistic front. Diana decisively pivoted to European fashion houses, using international luxury to crown her own, independent fashion royalty. In September 1995, during a visit to Paris, the First Lady of France presented her with a quilted black leather handbag with dangling letter charms. The bag was so new it did not even have an official name. Diana immediately recognized its architectural power, carrying the rigid, flawless accessory to high-profile diplomatic events and pairing it with daring Versace suits. In a rare move, Dior officially renamed the design the Lady Dior. By elevating a French design immediately following her rejection of Chanel, she demonstrated her absolute power to make or break a brand's legacy. This strategic elevation extended to Italian craftsmanship. She adopted the unbranded, utilitarian Todd's leather tote, a stark, clean-lined rejection of the heavily jeweled ceremonial accessories demanded by the palace. It was the ultimate luxury of anonymity. She amassed a collection of Ferragamo bags with distinctive gold-hooped gancio clasps, choosing Italian independence over British heritage. These choices were quiet rebellions, subtle refusals to visually support the establishment that was simultaneously attempting to sideline her. This reclamation of power extended far beyond the jewelry on her hands and the leather on her arm. It deeply influenced the physical space she occupied and the very air she breathed. The transformation of her inner world manifested powerfully in her choice of fragrance, an invisible accessory that she understood carried immense psychological weight. On her wedding day, stepping into street, Paul's Cathedral with hundreds of millions watching, she wore Quelques Fleurs l'Original, a heavy, romantic, and highly traditional floral perfume dating back to 1912. Behind the scenes, the immense pressure of the moment had overwhelmed her to the point that she accidentally spilled the perfume all over the front of her historic silk taffeta gown. She spent the entire agonizing walk down the aisle trying to obscure the stain with her hand. That traditional scent became inextricably linked to a profound sense of suffocation, fear, and the crushing weight of institutional expectations. By 1995, the terrified young bride had vanished, replaced by a woman who had finally found her footing. To mark this internal rebirth, she fundamentally changed her signature scent, adopting Hermès 24 Faubourg. This was not the damp, innocent woodland air of the Penhaligon's bluebells she wore in her youth, nor was it the heavy, anxiety-inducing floral of her wedding day. It was a sophisticated, warm blend of orange blossom, amber, and vanilla. It was the scent of a woman who had weathered the storm and emerged with her head held high. Changing her perfume was a deeply personal act of taking back control. ensuring that the air around her belonged entirely to her new identity, untainted by the ghosts of the past. This psychological elevation was mirrored quite literally in her physical stance, communicated through the footwear she selected. For the vast majority of her marriage, she restricted herself to practical, flat shoes. She was frequently photographed in $70 canvas Superga sneakers and soft leather Tod's Gomino driving shoes. While the public admired her down-to-earth practicality, the reality behind these choices was rooted in strict royal deference. She was exactly the same height as Prince Charles. To avoid bruising his ego and to maintain the traditional visual dynamic of the taller, dominant male figure in official photographs, she actively suppressed her own physical stature, famously keeping her heels strictly under 2 inches. She made herself smaller so that the institution could appear bigger. But as the marriage crumbled and the facade fell away, her confidence surged, and her heels rose in tandem. Her footwear orders progressively grew taller and taller as she navigated the separation. She was no longer willing to shrink herself for the comfort of the establishment. This physical reclamation reached its spectacular climax on the night of the 29th of June 1994. On the exact evening that a televised documentary aired featuring her, she did not hide away in the shadows. Instead, she arrived at a Vanity Fair party wearing the now legendary off-the-shoulder black Christina Stambolian dress. Black was a color strictly reserved for mourning within the royal family, making the dress a funeral shroud for her marriage and a breathtaking declaration of independence. She carried a sleek Ferragamo clutch, but most importantly, she stepped out of the car towering in high-heeled Manolo Blahnik stilettos. She was standing at her full height again, commanding the world's attention and completely eclipsing the televised royal confession. The ultimate culmination of this visual liberation occurred 3 years later, during the final summer of her life in 1997. In the warm, sun-drenched waters of the south of France, aboard Dodi Fayed's yacht, she was captured by the long lenses of the paparazzi in a series of images that would become her final, most powerful fashion statement. She wore a leopard print one-piece swimsuit by the brand Gotex, featuring high-cut athletic legs and a daring silhouette. To fully understand the gravity of this specific image, one must look closely at the historical context of royal women. For centuries, female members of the monarchy were defined by modest hemlines, high collars, carefully weighted skirts designed to prevent any accidental exposure, and a strict code of physical restraint. Displaying uninhibited, athletic sensuality was considered the ultimate institutional taboo. A royal body belonged to the state. It was not permitted to be free. Yet there she sat on the diving board, adorned in leopard print, a pattern universally recognized across fashion history as a symbol of the wild, of predatory confidence, and of untamed freedom. She was no longer the hunted prey of the paparazzi, nor was she the silent victim of a rigid palace hierarchy. The striking, unapologetic nature of the swimsuit signaled that she was in complete control of her physical form and her destiny. She did not need an official spokesperson, a carefully worded press release, or a televised interview to make her point. The image alone, broadcast across the globe in a matter of hours, was a definitive, undeniable declaration that she belonged to no one but herself. She had become the apex predator of her own narrative. Looking back at the sprawling collection of garments she left behind, it becomes undeniably clear that her strategy permanently altered the very definition of a royal artifact. For centuries, the public was conditioned to believe that historical significance was exclusively forged from gold, enamel, and precious stones, secured behind the bulletproof glass of the Tower of London. Yet, the objects that currently generate the most intense global fascination are woven from cotton, cut from denim, and stitched from calfskin. This dramatic shift in material value represents a monumental transfer of cultural power. When prominent auction houses announce a new collection of her personal garments, the fierce bidding wars that ensue are not driven by mere textile enthusiasts. They are driven by institutions and private individuals desperate to own a tangible piece of her defiance. The public's role in this dynamic cannot be understated. We were never passive observers in this sartorial war. We were the intended audience, the jury, and the willing accomplices. When millions of women purchased the exact same Levi's jeans, the identical white shirts, or the canvas sneakers, they were casting a decentralized vote of solidarity. The act of wearing what she wore became a visible form of public support that transcended borders. The palace administration could strictly control the official broadcasts and manage the ceremonial appearances, but they could absolutely not control millions of women walking the streets, carrying the exact same Gucci bamboo tote as the woman the establishment was actively attempting to sideline. It was an invisible army mobilized entirely by aesthetics. This profound shift in royal communication is actively being preserved and refined today by Catherine, Princess of Wales. Catherine understands this inherited landscape intimately. She navigates a media environment that is arguably even more complex and accelerated than the one her mother-in-law faced, dominated by the relentless speed of digital platforms and 24-hour news cycles. When Catherine deliberately chooses to step out in a high-street blazer, a simple pair of well-worn Superga trainers, or a moderately priced dress, she is executing a highly refined, modernized version of the original strategy. She is projecting an image of necessary accessibility, ensuring the monarchy remains tethered to the reality of the public it serves. But simultaneously, she is maintaining a strict, invisible boundary. By feeding the public these relatable, highly digestible fashion moments, she satiates their endless appetite for normalcy. This, in turn, allows her to keep her true private life and her family fiercely protected behind closed doors. Catherine uses these accessible items to project stability and approachability, ensuring that her own voice and boundaries are never compromised by the relentless machinery of the institution. She carries the sapphire engagement ring not just as a beautiful piece of jewelry, but as a continuous acknowledgement of the power of public connection. Through Catherine's steady, disciplined approach, the visual language of the accessible royal has been formalized into a permanent tool of modern diplomatic survival. We must, therefore, look at Diana's wardrobe not as a mere collection of seasonal clothes, but as a meticulously authored autobiography. Every hemline adjusted, every luxury logo deliberately discarded, every comfortable shoe selected, and every bottle of perfume changed was a carefully chosen word in a story she was writing in real time. She realized early on that while history is traditionally written by the victors behind closed doors, visual history is written by those who know how to hold the gaze of the public. She did not possess the authority to change the ancient laws of the monarchy, but she possessed the unparalleled ability to dictate how the world perceived the people operating within it. Her genius lay in the profound understanding that the most effective way to dismantle an archaic, rigid system was not to attack it with their own weapons of formal protocol and grand decrees. Instead, she brought the battleground down to the level of the pavement. She made the mundane extraordinary. By weaponizing the ordinary items that fill our own closets, she ensured that her presence would be felt every single time a woman slips on a pair of comfortable loafers, reaches for a structured leather tote, or wears a scent that makes her feel entirely herself. So, the next time you see a headline about a slightly frayed red sweater selling for $1.1 million at Sotheby's, understand the profound gravity of what you are witnessing. You are not looking at a mere fashion trend, a nostalgic artifact, or the frivolous purchase of a shopping princess. You are looking at the remnants of a brilliant, quiet revolution. You are looking at the exact tools a 19-year-old girl used to outmaneuver a 1,000-year-old institution. The establishment demanded a silent, compliant mannequin draped in priceless diamonds. She gave them a fiercely independent woman, armed with a gym bag and a pair of stilettos. And in doing so, she won the only war that truly mattered: the battle for her own narrative.